Hello, and welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we celebrate romanticism through passionate people doing incredible things. Hi, I'm Trey. You can find me at OrpheTunes on most social media platforms. And tonight I am joined by my co host, Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hi. Yay. So bad.
Oh my
That was
God.
so bad. Um I am excited to talk to who we have here today. We have Larry Hall with us. He is the chairman of the there's not even this is probably the coolest episode we're ever going to have cuz and I'm going to try really hard not to say the word cool. I'm going to get my thesaurus out and I'm going to come up with other words like fantastic and awesome and we'll see what happens there. But I can't wait to talk to Larry about the Jim Irsay Collection because that collection is a bit of history and rock and roll and pop culture, and it's amazing. So we're here to talk to him today. Welcome to the show, Larry.
Oh, thanks so much. I really appreciate both you having me on today. And thanks for that warm welcome. It's an iconic and eclectic and just a culturally significant combination of Mr. Irsay's passions. And can't wait to talk with you about it.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
little later in. Oh, we always do this. A little later in the show, you mentioned that you got a surprise for us, and that we will get to the collection a little bit later and talk some specifics. But Larry, one of the first things that I would like our listening audience to know is how did you get started in the Jim Irsay collection? Because that's just not something you just walk into and apply for.
That is correct. I'm very fortunate to be proudly from the west side of Cincinnati. Grew up in Cincy, used to park cars for Reds and Bengals games through high school and early college. And once I graduated, I actually got an offer to work full-time for the Bengals as their assistant ticket manager. And about a year and a half after that, that was the 1983 football season, the Colts moved from Baltimore to Indianapolis, March 29 of 84. And they called and asked permission to speak with me about being the lead ticket person. I came over and interviewed with Mr. Irsay, his father, Robert, then a couple other people all day long. And at the end of the day, they said, "You're our guy. We want you to come lead our ticket office." So I drove back to Cincy and told my wife, who's one of 9 kids, that we're going to move to Indianapolis. And she said, "I didn't think you had much of a chance for that job." And as it turns out, I guess I did. But it's been a real blessing and a pleasure. I ran the Colts ticket office for 35 seasons, 35 football seasons. Wonderful times, great memories. Some challenging years. I saw 1 in 15, and I saw us raise the trophy after winning the Super Bowl. So some fantastic memories. I feel like I've lived 3 or 4 lifetimes and just feel very, very fortunate, thanks to the Irsay family, to experience that. And then segueing into answering your question, actually, about 5 years ago, Mr. Irsay, said, "Hey, we really need to aggregate our historical affairs, and I'd love you to oversee that, some other special projects things, and also oversee my collection of artifacts." And I said, "Well, that's fantastic. I'd love to do it." Took it very, very seriously, read a lot, made a lot of new friends at like the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a number of other places, learned a fair amount about it. Custodial care is very important to me and how we take care of the artifacts. But that's really how I segued from, this is my 40th football season with the Colts. But overseeing the collection has just been a real joy, and working with Mr. Irsay. We're only 11 months to the day apart in age, and so our chronology of time is very similar. Man on the Moon, I was 9, he was 10. I mean, there's just these semblances back and forth of how, sort of we see things. Similarly, when it comes to looking for artifacts, and his passion for rock and roll, pop culture, and American history has manifested into this really, really cool collection, as Emily alluded to. It's really special. And I think I've looked, and I really can't see another collection that fits the same mold that Mr. Irsay has, because of those unique, traits. So I feel like we literally do have something for everyone.
I would say everybody's going to get some level of appreciation out of it, for sure. At least an American.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. And
really even when you talk worldwide, it's funny you mentioned that, because one of the wildest times I've had at auction was at Christie's Auction House in New York. David Gilmour of Pink Floyd auctioned off 127 items, and there were people there from all over the world. And so music, I think, is something we can agree transcends country lines, borders, yeah. Right? And so there is actually a plan in place to take the collection to Europe in 2025. I didn't mention that to you earlier, but so we're excited about that possibility. And I do think that's one thing that definitely is a common thread here again, the music piece. We've got a John Coltrane saxophone that he played through a summer tour in Japan back in 1966.
Oh, awesome.
So pretty significant, timeline here again, American history, music, all kind of melding together.
That is, okay, I'm not using the word cool, right? So
you can use it all you want. It's all
that is stellar. That is.
Yes, that's a good word.
Stellar. Wait, well done.
Well, I want to talk about the scope of what this collection actually means, because I think for anyone who maybe doesn't know, this collection does a couple things that a lot of museum or art type collections don't do, and that is it travels and it's free.
Right? That's right. It's very important to Mr. Irsay that the inspiration that he has received from the artist or the moments in time or the artifacts themselves gets transferred to other people. He wants to share that joy. And these are my words, but certainly fit, I think, what he feels. So at his expense, we take very good care of the artifacts and carefully have them shipped properly to a designated location. And then he has an all-star band that travels with him, and they put on a free concert. The exhibition's free. It's a wonderful time. Our next one is in Boston this coming weekend on July the 15th, Saturday night at TD Garden, where the Celtics and Bruins play. Mm-hmm. If you're in the Northeast or you have the desire to travel, please come see us. And if you simply go to JimIrsayCollection.com, you can get registration information there to get that free admission.
That sounds awesome.
We have our first question of the night, and someone asked, does anyone get to play the guitars?
Actually, Kenny Wayne Shepherd is a great, fantastic guitar player. He's a rock star of the nth degree to me. We do make sure that Tiger is one of the guitars that he's played. He's also played the Black Strat. I saw an interview that Kenny Wayne Shepherd did when someone asked, hey, should you really be playing this rare guitar? And his line, and I may be paraphrasing here, he said something like, look, we're not painting over the Mona Lisa here. He goes, I'm playing it set up the way that it was left last by the artist. In other words, the way Jerry Garcia had Tiger set up at the end, and Jerry used it at Soldier Field, which was his last live performance, Tiger. He played that guitar, meaning Kenny Wayne Shepherd played it the same way it was set up. So we don't change anything on it. That's, this custodial care is very, very important to us. And although it's played, it's carefully put back. And to answer the question, short answer is yes. Not all of them are going to be ones that we'd want to have played. Many guitar folks know pre-war Martin as a term, right? And when they hear that, it usually is a reference to World War II. Well, we have a pre-Civil War Martin, a little parlor guitar. That's obviously very fragile. We would never have someone try to play that. So it just is a matter of what the guitar is. But really only a few of them have been played publicly since they've been a part of the collection. We have a couple of great guys, Mark and Eric Johnson. They're twin brothers. They look after the guitars and they're historians of guitars. They know music. They have a recording studio themselves. And they're great friends of mine, I'm happy to say.
That is incredible. Just like as a musician myself, like I'm a singer, but I have grown up listening to a lot of the people that we were talking about in the green room just before the show started. And I need to come see this collection at some point, because I would just be drooling at all of the different guitars that you've got.
We'd love to have you come. Typically, it started off in Nashville, Tennessee, a couple years ago, the first tour stop, and it was much, much smaller then. It was really Mr. Irsay saying, hey, I'd really like to display some of the artifacts. And I said, well, when are you thinking about it? He said, a couple of weeks before, when we play the Titans in Tennessee. And I said, well, all right, let me start working on that. And it took a bit to pull it together, but we had a much smaller event to start. It was only 10 guitars. We also had the Beatles drum kit, used over 200 times in studio and 100 times on stage by Ringo Starr, right? And the drum head from the Ed Sullivan Show. Those made the trip, okay? And then there were a number of other things that we had in Nashville, but now we take over 100 artifacts. But we started in Nashville a couple years ago. Went to Washington, D.C., Austin, L.A., New York, Chicago, Indy, San Fran, Las Vegas, and now this coming Saturday night, Boston. So this will be our 10th stop. It's really fun for us to do it. I love to see people's faces when they see some of these iconic artifacts. It's just, I really think what it does is it takes them back. It's a nostalgia thing. There are moments in time with some of these artifacts that are historic. The Beatles drum head I referenced from the Sullivan Show. So you got this Ludwig, drum head. It's the Beatles and Ringo Starr. You add that to the Ed Sullivan Show, and now it's this confluence, this coming together of these things that are so special. I argue that that's really part of American history as much as it is music, right? And then the piece that resonates more than any with me would be each individual had through their own eyes. And Trey, you were just talking about this, drooling over seeing them. But I'm sure there are specific songs or specific things from an artist or the artifact may elicit back out. Dare I say, even a romanticism to it, since we're on the modern romantic.
Of course.
How do you, of all the locations that you're going to, how do you decide on a particular location?
Well, Mr. Irsay really, it's his name on the collection, and he gets to pick and choose where he'd like to have the collection go. A lot of major metropolitan cities are in consideration. You heard me kind of crisscross the country there, right? We touched both coast, north, south. Here again, we talked about and are looking at possibly having Europe come up, if not next year, probably the year after. So really, I think any major metropolitan areas in play. We've talked about Phoenix and New Orleans, and nothing's eminent into those cities, but places in Florida that we haven't been to. I really feel like because of what we talked about earlier, meaning there's something for everyone in the collection, we'd be hard pressed not to find a place where most people would come and not enjoy seeing these artifacts. They're just here again so iconic and eclectic, and I think tapping into your own emotions of memory and the way in which music in particular, but certainly books can do the same thing. We've got first editions of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. There's Amelia Earhart's For the Fun of It that she inscribed. So there are some really cool pieces there. Probably the most significant, of course, would be really the first thing that Jim Irsay bought that was of significant size and cost would be Jack Kerouac's On the Road Scroll. And for those not familiar with it, 119 feet long, 119 feet, 7/8, I think it is. But for Kerouac, he is sort of a coming of age. It's sort of the Beat Generation Genesis, written in the early 50s, published in the late 50s. And we've displayed that on what would have been Kerouac's 100th birthday. That was the event we had in Los Angeles. And we had the entire thing unfurled in a long case, right? And a lot of other cool things around it, and some really cool readings that were done, some spoken word. So the show changes a little bit. We try to change out some of the artifacts, make sure there's always something new and fresh. Recently acquired an Eddie Van Halen guitar that's going to be in Boston. We also recently acquired an acoustic that Bob Dylan played at Bill Clinton's inauguration. Okay. So here again, I'm going back to artifact, artist, Bob Dylan is really kind of the poet laureate of a generation. And I love that the other guitar that we have from Dylan Goes Electric. So there's this Newport Folk Festival every year. And back in the early 60s, he shows up and does his usual great job of, telling great stories on his acoustic, takes a break, and after the intermission comes out and plays an electrical. As I'm told, half the people booed, half the people cheered, right? But that's this moment in time where Dylan said, hey, look, I can change and morph, continue to reinvent myself. Mm-hmm. That guitar has those same traits that I described with the Beatles' Ed Sullivan drumhead, right? There's a number of things in the collection that do that. And I just think that's the really super wow moment for me. I know one description I heard, a different appraiser said something like, the fewer words you can describe something and have people understand what it is and give you that eye-popping, jaw-dropping sort of a thing, and that's where you say, Beatles drumhead, Sullivan Show. 4 words, and most people that know music or pop culture or American history even would say, wow, they have that in the Jim Irsay collection. Yes, we do. It's diverse enough that, most locations were able to bring this Hunter S. Thompson, it's called the Great Red Shark. This car is 18 and a half feet long. It belonged to Hunter S. Thompson. Mr. Irsay acquired it directly from his widow. and it was used in the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Johnny Depp played Hunter S. Thompson. So that's a cool piece. It's a convertible, red, bright red, just a Caprice Classic from 1973. It's a beautiful car. There's a number of different things in the collection that here again, eclectic and iconic. And I'm going to say cool because Emily hasn't said it in the last couple of minutes. I thought I'd work that in for her.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That. I get like a freebie now.
Yes, you do.
That is cool. I love that car, actually. I remember it. I'm sure a lot of people in our audience would too. That's an iconic car.
Right. There's certain venues that just physically it's tough to get it in or out or whatever, but it's been at almost every event that we've had, and our intention is to continue to try to do that. Most of the time, we've got a great vibe with two different pianos, right? John Lennon had a piano in his home at Tittenhurst Park in Kenwood, two different houses that John Lennon owned. It was made by John Broadwood and Sons, and they're out of business now, but they went back far enough. They used to make pianos for Mozart and the King of England, not the current King of England, way back in like 1870, right? It's this beautiful upright piano, and it actually predated man's use of electricity. So there were candelabras on it. Now think about that.
Sure.
That's how far back it went. And so this particular piano is called the Sgt. Pepper's piano because he composed many of the songs from that album on this piano.
Oh, cool.
Really super cool piece, right? Requires a lot of special care. And but the other one is one of my favorites, one of my favorite pieces. And I love all the stuff in the collection. It's really all of it's very fantastic and for varying reasons. But Elton John's piano is definitely one of my favorites. It's this grand piano that he played for 20 years at 1,100, a little over 1,100 concerts. He lent it to Freddie Mercury for a year. So Queen toured with it for a year. It went from lacquer black to lacquer white. Paul McCartney played it at Live Aid.
Wow.
And 1.9 billion people
Yeah.
watched that event on television, and just a ton of superstars around Paul playing this piano. All the famous concerts that Elton played, including the two big ones at Dodger Stadium, where the sequin outfit, right, with the Dodger, uniform mimicked on it. And it also was the last time that John Lennon performed on stage live in front of an audience was with Elton John and this piano. So think about all the different places it's been. It's sort of like the Forrest Gump of pianos.
I'm sure it has a lot of stories to tell if it could talk.
No question about it. It's a fantastic piece, and it's one that I know Mr. Irsay and I both love dearly. It's really very, very cool, I'll say.
You got me. There was one thing that you said that made me think. You said the piano is very important to you. Do you have maybe other than the piano, or maybe the answer is the piano? What piece in the collection speaks to you personally?
Oh, there's so many. That Elton piano does for a number of different reasons, but I can harken back to freshman year of high school, and I gave my then girlfriend this album of Elton John's greatest hits, and unbeknownst to me, she was giving me the same album.
Oh,
yeah, I know.
I love that.
It's sort of romantic, I know, right?
You should write a screenplay now.
Well, I think so. She got a teddy bear, and I got cologne. Anyway, so there's different memories I think that associate with him. I love that piano, but seriously, there's so many that I do love. Shifting gears real quickly over to American history. When you walk into the room that we display these artifacts in, and from across the room, if you can recognize what it is right away and know what it is, that's really cool to me too. A couple come to mind. Uncle Sam, James Montgomery flag, fashioned, using his likeness and one of the veterans from war, the Uncle Sam "I Want You" poster. And when you see, we have a brilliant copy of that. Most people, I think, associate with World War II. It's actually from World War I. Ours is from 1917. Wow. It's a beautiful piece. It's brilliant. And that iconic image, you walk into, like I said, walk into the big room, and you can see across the room, you immediately know what it is.
Yeah.
Another one that is just absolutely fantastic is we have a William Stone copy of the Declaration of Independence. So back in 1820, John Quincy Adams, the then Secretary of State, was recognizing that, hey, and other people with Congress, right, were recognizing that the Declaration's fading. And if we don't do something, and they didn't have photography, they didn't have a way to mimic it, right? We're going to just completely lose it altogether. So we should commission an artist to make an exact replica. So William Stone is commissioned to do that, and it takes him 3 years to do it on a huge copper plate backwards. He takes this huge copper plate, presses it onto vellum, right, like veal skin. 201 copies were made. 55 are known to exist. Only 11 are in private hands, and there is one in the Jim Irsay collection. Wow. So that's certainly one of my favorites. And obviously, we just recently had the 4th of July, the celebration of our country. I know we've got some issues and love to see us all do the peace and love thing like Ringo talks about. But at the end of the day, it's still a great, great country. And that Declaration of Independence, that speaks to me. That really does. There are other things that are super significant. One that to me transcends artifacts is the AA Big Book, the original working manuscript for Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the foundational piece for the 12-step program. And while it was geared towards alcoholism at that time, those same 12-step programs have been used for all sorts of other addiction disorders. It's something that Mr. Irsay takes very, very seriously. It also holds a special place in my heart for a number of reasons. I certainly have some family members who've been challenged with that, and knock on wood, are doing well now in a good way. But it was the first artifact that I was Mr. Irsay's proxy at an auction. And so as we're on the phone and he's telling me to bid on this item, when we finally were the victors and won the ability to have it, and remember, he calls himself a steward of the artifacts. He's a steward of the horseshoe, the Colts, and a steward of the artifacts. He knows we're all going to pass, and his is but a caretaker.
I love that.
He said, but Larry, look, it doesn't matter to me what it cost. If it helps save one person, it'll be worth every penny. So that's pretty special, right? Yeah. That's pretty special. That transcends artifacts. That's something that goes way beyond other things, and not to diminish the other things.
Sure.
But that particular book, I've seen people you walk up to it and literally just start crying because it meant that much to them, or it meant that much to a family member. It's a phenomena that, one of the greatest things created by man probably in that century was this 12-step program. And the fact that original working manuscript, that last document with all these handwritten edits and notes on it, is a part of the collection, is something very, very special. It doesn't, when it's not on tour, it's at a local suburban North Club, is a recovery center here in the Northeast side on a town called Noblesville, just outside of Indianapolis. It's there, and you can check their website, the Suburban North Club, to see when it might be available. You can't just show up anytime because they do have regular meetings and such there. But we've took very, very special care when the building is built to work with a number of experts to make sure that there was a special room created for it. I worked with a company out of Frankfurt, Germany, to get high-end cases made for some of the guitars on display when they're here in Indy, and the case that was made for the AA Big Book. So those things lead themselves to, certainly things that are life-altering, and the music and the American history and the pop culture all matter, and they're very much a part of our lives. But we're talking about saving people's lives. It's a very, very special piece. And from that emanated a number of different things. One called Kicking the Stigma. And that's the initiative that the Irsay family, Mr. Irsay and with Kaylin Irsay Jackson and the other daughters, have created to create mental health awareness and care. And basically, sum it up, it's okay to not be okay. Yeah. To get away from the stigma of mental health challenges, to make sure people have resources and help. And it's become a nationwide campaign. I really think they're thinking about taking it international. So those are some things that are just here again. I would say transcend artifacts.
That transcends cool.
Very well said. Well said. Absolutely. And everybody has somebody in their family and maybe themselves, right, who's had some challenges. And I love Mr. Irsay for a lot of reasons. His philanthropy, people know about a lot of times, but there's a lot of things that he does for folks that no one ever sees, or hears about, And so, it's just, he's a really good-hearted person. And I love the fact that I have the privilege of working with him. And it's a huge responsibility for me to look after the collection. And luckily for me, I've got a great team of people and others that I can lean into to do our absolute best to take care of it. But, some really, really cool things that people can see in Boston this coming weekend. I'll do a little bit of a sneak peek. Shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. Early September 8th, we're targeting Indianapolis again, Lucas Oil Stadium, which is our big football stadium the Colts play in. plan to have another event. So I'm kind of letting the cat out of the bag. Forgive me, whoever's going to get mad about me doing that. Our communications guy or other people. It's a sneak peek for you all to plan. If you can't make it to Boston, July 15th, then September the 8th, Indianapolis. Come see us. It's a wonderful time. Mr. Irsay has a great time with the band. A lot of special people in that band. Kenny Aronoff, Mike Mills, Mike Wanchik. I go on. Mike Ramos, Kenny Wayne Shepherd I mentioned earlier. So many. And then special guests that have played with us this coming weekend in Boston. We're going to have Peter Wolf from the Jay Giles Band, Kevin Cronin from REO Speedwagon, and then Vince Gill, 22-time Grammy winner.
Nice.
So those are some of the special guests that are coming in addition to the regular band. Carmela is she's a wonderful violinist and fiddler that supplements too. I'm probably forgetting someone, so forgive me. Tom Bukovac, I could go on and on and on. Billy Branch plays harmonica and other things. There's just a ton of people that play with them on a regular basis, and then special guests. It's amazing. People. I've heard Jim Irsay say this before. He'll be like, when people hear about it, they go, "What's the catch?" It's like, do you have to watch a 2-hour video about buying a condo? I mean, why can I get to do all this cool stuff without having to pay anything, right? It's like, why? How is this? How's this happening? But I go back to here again. Mr. Irsay's philanthropy. I mean, he's a great guy. And he again, the inspiration from the artifacts, the artist, in those moments in time that he loves to share with people.
Well, sorry.
No, it definitely comes across like that because you've talked so positively, even before the podcast started, about all of the work that Mr. Irsay does, all of the philanthropy work that you've mentioned up to now with Kicking the Stigma, and for the fact that this entire show is completely free. The concert is free. The show is free. All the work that he's doing, it's really not just preserving art or history. It's really making a connection with people in general and inviting a conversation for people to be and come together. And that's one of the things that I love about this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it warms my heart when I think about it. And there's times when you've got that whole pinch me moment where you're sort of like, am I really doing this? It's just, it's amazing at times. And here again, I don't take it for granted. I never do. It's a privilege to be involved with it. I love to see the joy on people's faces. And that's another way I've described it when someone says, well, can you elaborate even more on why Jim Irsay does this? And I think to myself, well, this is me kind of extrapolating out, but I think almost it's like we get joy. All of us get joy by giving other people joy. And I think he's just like everyone else, right? And he's just able to do it on a scale beyond what most people can, right? Because of his resources, his passion, his desire to collect these things and then share them, right? It's not about having them even be in one place. He's talked about possibly a brick and mortar museum someday. Nothing's imminent. Right now, I know this. He loves taking it on the road, and for the foreseeable future, that's what I see us doing. So, I really appreciate the kind words, and we're always telling people, hey, look, if you get a chance, you should really come see it because it's one thing. Certainly, you can go to our website and look at different videos that have been made and photos, and they're great. Believe me, they really are. There's nothing like seeing that Beatles drumhead from the Sullivan Show in person and knowing what that meant to millions, tens of millions of people. I can almost hear the teenage girls screaming in the back of my ear when I watched the video, right? I was a very, very young boy, so I don't remember it, but I remember seeing the video so many times, and they just were so giddy and screamed, and it was quite the phenomenon to have them come to America.
Well, and some of those items are like goosebump worthy, that is a connection to something in history that brings a feeling to people that normal everyday items don't necessarily bring. The idea that you're in the presence of something that you only heard of in books or on TV or through whatever. That is the fact that you get to have that, and all of it in one place is to reach people that way is amazing.
No question. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a lot of fun for us. And, my wife loves the American history part. We have a letter from George Washington that he wrote to Thomas Jefferson the day after the Constitution was ratified.
Wow.
And so when you say that out loud, it's sort of like, wait a second. It's two Mount Rushmore guys. Like there's a thing in sports where you say, well, who's your Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks? Who's your Mount Rushmore? No. These two guys are on Mount Rushmore. One president writing to the other. and
Wow.
it's hugely significant. It's a really cool piece. I think that in particular, I know he hand wrote the whole thing. Many letters from presidents years ago were written by aides and then signed by the president.
Sure.
And we have several Abraham Lincoln letters that were maybe written by an aide, but we also have several that he wrote himself. And to show you a little bit about the width and the breadth of the collection when it comes to, say, Lincoln letters, there's one in particular that is something that's not super important, but he wrote a letter of recommendation for two young ladies to get a job with the U.S. Postmaster. Okay, not hugely significant, but to show the depth and the breadth of the thing, the collection itself and those Lincoln letters. There's also one that talks about a prisoner exchange, because during the Civil War, evidently there was a battle where the Northern soldiers were being overrun by the South, and they had used a farmhouse as a triage place for wounded soldiers. And a surgeon that was very, important to the Northern Army, was told, retreat. He said, no, I'm going to stay with the men. And he did, and he got captured. And so Lincoln made a big deal out of trying to get a prisoner exchange going. Unfortunately, it never worked. The man was kept in a prison, the military prison, for some time. And towards the end of the war, he was able to finally either be released or escape and make his way back. But that letter is hugely significant. And then there's another letter, a separate letter from that one, has nothing to do with that piece. That is a presidential pardon, a stay of execution. Okay. So you've got a letter of recommendation, stay of execution, a request for a prisoner exchange, several thank you letters for presentation canes, were a very popular thing to give back then. We also have this incredible pocket knife that was a gift to Abraham Lincoln by the Sanitary Commission in Philadelphia. Sanitary Commission looked after Northern soldiers, and so to recognize all the efforts that Lincoln had put into this, they gifted him this pearl pocket knife, and two different blades. One has liberty, one has equality on it. And a man named A.B. Justice was the one that crafted it. It came in a wooden box. It's about this big. It came in a wooden box. The wood from that box used to hold up the Liberty Bell.
Oh.
So think about that, right? I mean, it's a really cool piece. And we didn't acquire it straight away from it's handed down over the years. But someone was able to pull back together the thank you letter that Lincoln wrote for the knife. So we display those three pieces together: the knife, the box, and the thank you letter. Mr. Irsay loves Lincoln, several of the presidents, obviously. But in the end, I just wanted to give a little bit of an example of both the depth and the breadth of the collection.
Yeah. When you're moving these artifacts around, there's such a variety with guitars and small items like pocket knives and larger items. How do you possibly move these things without getting destroyed?
Well, we do our best. And without giving away all the trade secrets, we've had some special cases made. They're super heavy but soft inside, and we have some what we call frame trunks that we slot the letters into, and each of the letters has their own unique slot with huge appropriate padding around it, and we know where each one of those go, and all of it gets carefully packaged to make the trips. Obviously the pianos, we lean into piano movers. We work with Steinway and Company to get recommendations in each city and who the best of the best are. And then they hear my, I'll say speech about artifact first, piano second.
Yeah.
Right. The truth be known, I think there's so many priceless things, and priceless is a cliche, but priceless is true in this case. So for example, if the Beatles drums, if you put a value on them and said, $5.6 million is what they're worth today. Well, whether it's 5.6 or 56 million, if heaven forbid an earthquake comes and takes them away, doesn't matter all the money in the world. You can't buy another Beatles drum head from the Silver Show. There's only that one, right? So there's a number of things like that are the AA Big Book. Obviously, that's the one of one. It's literally a priceless artifact. So we do our absolute best. We're always self-evaluating, self-scouting, so to speak, is kind of a thing from football. We work with a lot of different experts in different fields to make sure that we're doing our absolute best. Obviously, I'm not going to deny there is some risk taking on the road. Mr. Irsay understands that. Yeah. But he feels like that risk is worth the reward of seeing the joy and inspiration that it gives to other people.
I would say.
I would agree. And if I can be an advocate to keep it going on the road, For me, coming from also from the theater world and from that sort of thing, there's a lot of things that are kind of landlocked, and people will not have that same experience because they're not able to get to certain places. So if I can advocate for that, I would love to see it continuing going on the road.
Same.
Thank you, Trey. I love the fact that you brought that up. It's fantastic. And going back to your earlier point about being a performer, a singer, Jim Morrison of The Doors, right? Back to rock and roll, right? Love that. His instrument was his voice. We happen to have a gold microphone that he used every show except one. It's chronicled that he used this every show except one the last 2 years of his life. And it's a beautiful gold microphone. And that was the conduit by which his instrument, his voice, was given to the world. So there's a lot of really cool things that people can come to see. And I definitely encourage people to do that when it's near them or if they have to travel to do it.
One thing that I'm curious about, because you've mentioned that you've acquired some pieces through either auction houses or from donations and those sorts of things. If a piece were to be donated to you, what does that process look like of validating it, of getting the historical pieces done, of making sure that it's properly kind of contained? For what secrets that are not restricted in your non-disclosure agreement, of course.
Sure. And that makes it sound very formal. It is a process, but really when it comes to, there's really two main ways, just if I may go back, through auctions or private acquisitions. But we really haven't had things donated so much, except maybe some close friends in the music industry to Mr. Irsay have given him some guitars, that sort of thing. But for the most part, it's auctions and private acquisitions. To us, provenance is everything. If it's a private acquisition, I'll admit my guard goes way up. It's like, why isn't it going to auction? Is it really to our advantage? And sometimes it is, to be able to acquire something privately without it going. And sometimes it may be the family doesn't necessarily want to put it out there. I don't think it's a problem for me to say this, that we have a hat that was going to be gifted to John F. Kennedy, unfortunately, the day he was assassinated. And that came straight from the Conley family. John Conley, the governor of Texas, was in the car at the time and obviously was hit by a few bullets as well. And it was supposed to be given to the president later that night. Well, they held on to it, and we were able to acquire that in a private acquisition. Wow. And that was really because they didn't want to make a lot of fanfare about it, but knew it had historical significance and wanted it to be presented to people and just as what it is, which is this part of history, American history. Going back to the different ways, it's fascinating to me how there are relatively small auction houses that we've dealt with. We acquired a Susan B. Anthony photo that was one of those things, it sounds like someone made up, but found in an attic in the Northeast, and it was all verified that it is her, taken just a few months before she passed. And that was a very small auction house in upstate New York. We acquired that piece, and it was one of the bigger pieces in their auction. And a wonderful family drove down from upstate New York on their family vacation to deliver it to me in Indianapolis, which I thought was fantastic, right? So that's kind of a behind the scenes auction piece that this family valued it so much and didn't want to take a chance on shippers. And there's a lot of high end U.S. Art shippers in the U.S. But that is sort of a behind the scenes piece to things very, very public. One of the biggest, attractions in terms of an auction event, the Black Stratocaster was the 127th artifact from David Gilmour. And it was Christie's auction house in New York, and they did a very nice job of promoting it. They took all the artifacts to London, England for a week or two for people to see the artifacts. And then they took them to Los Angeles to see for a week or two. And they finally bring them to New York. And there's all this buildup. And I went with Mark Johnson, one of our guitar specialists, historians, sound men, Mr. Everything, really, when it comes to music. And we scouted, and we made a report back from Mr. Irsay. We said, here are the things that we think should be considered. And he came back and said, hey, let's go after the Wish You Were Here acoustic, which I'll admit sometimes gets overshadowed by the Black Stratocaster. But the Wish You Were Here acoustic, when they asked David Gilmour, if you were stranded on a deserted island, what would be your one luxury item if you were allowed one? And he said that acoustic guitar, because all my songs poured out of it. Oh. So that's a hugely significant piece. Talk about mental health. Wish You Were Here. One of their bandmates, unfortunately, had some real mental challenges. And the song itself starts off with almost like an AM car radio playing. And then a 12-string guitar comes in. And then this iconic 6-string guitar There's iconic riffs, and it's really fascinating to me. The lines, did you trade your walk-on part in a war for a lead role in a cage? And it talks about that cage being that addiction piece, right? So there's a lot of cool things that have come from hearing, and Emily, go back to cool. The cool things that have come out of my involvement and my understanding and continued understanding and appreciation for the collection. But things as simple as those folks that love Pink Floyd, not just in the US, but around the world. Back to Christie's in New York in 2019, June, when it came down, and I'm on the phone with Mr. Irsay, and he's giving me instructions on when to bid, and it starts off, at maybe 600,000, goes back and forth, gets up to $1 million, and the room's packed. It's completely packed, 500 people or more. They have a second room. There are people bidding online. There are people bidding via phone. There's cell phones everywhere going, capturing everything. We end up on odd numbers. They're on even. So we're 1.1, they're 1.2. And it goes back and forth. And this British lady who's Gemma Sudlow from Christie's is at the dais. And, she's going back and forth in a very formal, kind of almost like a Harry Potter wizardry kind of a way. And it's very surreal as it's all going on. Remember, this is at the end of a 9-hour day. I've been there for 9 hours. And I got there early. And finally, we're 2.9. She goes, $3 million. And the crowd's, ooh, right? All this great build up to it. What do you want to do, Mr. Irsay? And he comes back. We go 3-1, 3-2, 3-3. We're at 3-3, and it slows down. And I get this good feeling that, hey, I think we're there, right? So I said, listen, brother, I think we're good, right? And there's a long protracted delay, and she's trying to buy time for the other bidder. So this is a very public and significant piece that's out in front of everybody. And finally, she looks down at me from on high and says, going once, going back over to him, going twice, for $3.3 million here at Christie's. This is your moment. And she says, and I jump in the air for joy. It's a wonderful experience that I'll never forget. Pump my fist, and just really, really, it's surreal to even talk about it. There's video, so I know it happened. It wasn't just my imagination. But in the end, Mr. Irsay was elated. Of course, after taxes and fees, it creeps up $4.1 million. At that time was the most expensive guitar in the world. But it's really, the money matters. Don't get me wrong, it definitely does. But these are really priceless artifacts. I mean, David Gilmour spent a lot of time modifying that guitar. He got it from Manny's in 1969 and modified it over time to get that exact special sound, the way to make it sound just the way it is. But I wanted to give a couple examples of how, if it's a small auction house in upstate New York, doesn't matter. We can still find things that resonate with the collection, like that Susan B. Anthony letter. We have others, Susan B. Anthony photo. We also have letters from Susan B. Anthony. We make a real intention to try to make sure there's diversity in the collection. We talked about in rock and roll, I believe before the show started, about the John Coltrane saxophone from 1966 that he played summer in Japan. And then we have a Miles Davis trumpet. We have James Brown's cape, this red sequin cape.
Yeah.
And I love James Brown, right? I love James Brown, and he would sort of feign exhaustion near the end of the show, and his cape man would come out and put the cape on, right? Yeah. And then he would throw it off and go for another song, right? So we've got just a ton of really, really cool things that I obviously love to talk about, but they're better to come see. Yeah. So everyone should try to do that. Try to come see us at one of the stops we make. But just to segue over real quick to private acquisitions, going back to that real quick, that's something that we've got to make sure it's 100% accurate. The best situation for me is when it comes straight from the artist or straight from the athlete or straight from the performer, right?
Sure.
So just last year, Ron Turcotte was the jockey that rode Secretariat to the Triple Crown. And Mr. Turcotte's representatives reached out to me. I turned to Mr. Irsay. We were a part of a private bidding process that we ended up being the winning bidder. And in order to get the saddle, I brought a specialist, an appraiser with me, one of Mr. Turcotte's representatives. We all went to Newark, then flew to Presque Isle, Maine, which is the northern Maine regional airport. I've never been to Maine only once prior in the southern part for vacation in the summer. And it's the dead of winter. And we stay in Presque Isle. And the next day, rented a car, and I'm driving this road that looks like it's going off into the sky, right? There's 150-foot pine trees. It's snowing. The road's covered. And it's one of those pinch yourself moments. You're like, are we really doing that? So we're going to go meet this iconic, famous jockey, Ron Turcotte, that unfortunately, after winning Triple Crown in 1973, 5 years later in 1978, was paralyzed from a horse racing accident. Oh. But it's a Canadian country gentleman. He had the saddle. We met him in Van Buren, which is way at the northern part of the state. And it was a wonderful exchange. I got to meet with him, obviously, and see the saddle and have our expert look at it. And when you get a letter from the person who wrote it saying this is the saddle, and you can do photo matching, right? Now you feel good about it. Now I can go back to Mr. and say, yeah, this is legit. And that's what an iconic piece that is, right? Because I believe Muhammad Ali and Secretariat are the only two entities that appeared on the cover of Time, Newsweek, and Sports Illustrated in the same week, right? So different weeks, but that after winning Triple Crown, Secretariat was on all three, and Muhammad Ali was on all three another period of time. So those are really special memories for me from a behind the scenes sort of how we do things. But it's best when it comes straight away from the artist or the jockey in this case. And he actually famously rode Riva Ridge the year before, 1972, to win the Kentucky Derby in the Belmont. And as I understand it, mostly from watching the movie, is it kind of helped save Meadow Stables, so that Secretariat could then run in 1973, win the Triple Crown, still holds the record for those races for all three. And the last one, the Belmont Stakes, and we just took the saddle up there when that happened this year because it was the 50th anniversary. Secretariat won by 31 lengths. And for those that don't know horse racing, a length is 8 feet. So multiply 8 feet times 31. There's this famous picture of Ron Turcotte looking over his shoulder, like, where is everybody, right? He's so far out in front. It's fantastic. I think really Secretariat captured the hearts and minds of Americans. I was 13 at the time. I remember that, right? I remember people, we were all rooting for the same horse. I didn't know why necessarily, other than it was this, captured the hearts and minds of everyone and had this iconic nature. Big Red was its nickname. And as I understand it, after Secretariat passed, they did look at the anatomy of the horse, and that it was like twice the size of an average horse of that same size. So it figuratively had a big heart and literally had a big heart. And that's obviously translated into why it was such a strong competitor.
I think having a private sale from the artist or the person themselves like that also carries more meaning, in that they clearly want the Jim Irsay collection and believe in that enough to want to sell directly to it, or to have it donated or whatever directly to it, so that it's part of this awesomeness. See, I didn't use the word cool. Part of this.
Well done.
Thank you. Part of this awesomeness that the Jim Irsay collection is, and I think that speaks to that as well, or at least from my perspective, it would. We
talked about it. Ron Turcotte and I talked about it, and he said, yeah, I love what Mr. Irsay's doing with the collection. The fact that people are going to get to see it, that to Trey's point earlier, travels around. He's advocating for that. I certainly get heartburn when we go on the road, but I understand the why part of it, and I love the fact that we're doing it. I know there's some inherent risk to that, and we all accept that. But in the end, I think you're right, Emily. To have it come straight away from the artist and have him talk about that specifically, that sharing and the way it's presented matters, very much to the people who were the artists or athletes that were associated with these things.
Yeah.
You've mentioned that Mr. Irsay really likes Abraham Lincoln. He clearly enjoys preserving history and music and art, and kind of the juxtaposition of all three of those together. Are there any pieces, or is there anything from a particular person that Mr. Irsay is looking for to include in his collection?
That's a great question. It's funny because while I could say anything, I'll say it in a general sense because I don't want to give away too much and then have the whole market changes on price or something.
Oh yeah,
Because of something I said in a podcast. I was like, why did he say that?
Just change the whole stock market.
Let's put it this way. Mr. Irsay has his eye on anything that's iconic. And certainly if it falls within American history, pop culture, rock and roll. That's not to say we won't look outside of it. And I think, I part of me hates to put things in silos, but I think it helps frame for people some idea of the iconic nature of it and how diverse it can be. There for a long time, I'll share that he really loved, Castaway, the movie, and wanted to get a Wilson volleyball. And before I was involved in the collection, he had bid on one and lost out. And then afterwards he thought, I wish I would have gone up, I think, as I recall, as the story goes. So we were fortunate to get one here just in the last year or so. That I think that was the one that he kind of in the back of his mind, really wanted to add to the collection. And so it was good to have it be a part of it. We've got a number of different things that I think if he thought about it in advance, he would say, well, of course, the acoustic guitar that Eric Clapton played on MTV Unplugged would be incredible, because that's one of those triumvirates, right? Where it's this, one of the greatest guitar players ever, if not the greatest, right? Eric Clapton with this iconic acoustic guitar. And then that moment in time, MTV Unplugged, where I believe he won 6 Grammys in Rock and Roll Song of the Year, Layla. So very, very special piece. I really think it's just about, the team that has been created to kind of look out for things on an auction basis. And now, because of the public nature of the collection, I get a lot of emails of people who have things. And I'm always cognizant of the fact that it probably has more value to the recipient that currently has it than it may to someone else. So I'm always polite about it. And candidly, a lot of these things are very, very valuable. They just necessarily don't fit our collection. We don't really do a lot with photography. We do have some original NASA photos of the first time an American walked in space.
Oh.
And it's an official photo but that's really the only one beyond Susan B. Anthony. There may be a couple of others. We've got one that we display. Harry S. Truman's hat he wore on Inauguration Day. We've got a photo of him next to it, but we don't go looking for photography necessarily. So those are things I get. A lot of people say, I have an amp I want to sell. We have a few amps. We have the Budman amp. That's a great partner with Tiger, Grateful Dead, Jerry Garcia. But for some reason, people always want to sell us an amp or have us acquire an amp. And it's really, I guess because we have all these guitars, they think, well, they must need a lot of amps. And it turns out we really don't. But
doesn't have the same impact as a guitar does.
No, it truly doesn't. And yet there's certainly a huge part of the performance, right? But I think that instrument speaks for itself, held in a virtuoso's hand, or that microphone, right, for the singer we talked about with Jim Morrison and Trey being a singer, right?
I was going to say, Trey, when you're done with that microphone, you ought to consider donating it.
We have a limited amount of things we can take on the road. So maybe no offense to Trey, but
none taken.
Good. It's probably been lightly used. It hasn't been used for decades or 1,100 shows yet, right? Not yet.
No, not at all. 2 million, just saying.
Okay. We'll talk offline.
Well, we've asked about Mr. Irsay. And what about you? Is there any person that you're looking for to include in the collection?
I would say it's a matter of respecting always the man's name who's on the collection, Jim Irsay. His preference is always going to trump everything, rightly so. Sure. But I'm fortunate a lot of my preferences are in line with his. I'm constantly thinking in terms of, is there something we don't have that fits sort of if music were a tree and we have these branches coming off, right? Is there a branch that we don't have represented that may fit his style at least well enough to acquire? We recently got Billie Joe Armstrong from Green Day, a guitar that, Billie Joe's not exactly that same era with Beatles and Dylan, that sort of thing. Yeah. But they're Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and certainly Mr. Irsay respects what they've accomplished. So that was one that we recently added. And I think to answer Trey's question, I'm looking, for things that fit Mr. Irsay's preferences, but also things that may not be in the collection that, at least in my mind, would merit consideration.
Sure.
And so to that end, at this point, there's over 200 guitars in the collection. We travel with 30. And
That's a lot.
It's wonderful to have not debate, but certainly discussion about, okay, who's going to get bumped off the wall now that we have this Jimi Hendrix guitar that he had gifted to his friend Billy Davis, who's also Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And evidently, I'm told that Billy Davis used to play with his teeth and behind his back before Hendrix did. So obviously, one would extrapolate out of that. That's kind of where Hendrix got the idea to do it. So that's a pretty cool piece, right? That Jimi Hendrix. Okay, now you start looking at the wall. Were you going to take off the black Strat? No. Kurt Cobain's "Smells Like Teen Spirit" blue Mustang that really kind of changed the way people thought about how they ate, dressed, listened to music, their way of life. It's not going to bump that. So that's a fun thing for us to have. It's a great kind of quote problem, if you will. It's really not a problem. We do like to rotate things through, and I obviously lean very heavily into Mark and Eric Johnson when it comes to the guitars. But it's just a lot of fun for us to work through the process and try to keep it fresh. Obviously, we have some people that have been to multiple locations, and we want to make sure that they're seeing something new each time.
Sure. Speaking of that, you have a list of things.
I do. Things going to Boston. We talked about this a little bit. So you want to take that ride, and we'll just do some randomness. Maybe let the audience pick a number.
Yeah.
If we're gonna do it, let me go ahead and we've been sitting for a while, so the jacket's coming off. Okay.
Yes.
You guys to know.
Great.
Okay. We're gonna have to probably get out my 63-year-old eyes. We'll need this for the very small font that is the list in front of me. So the idea is someone calls out a number. Let's start with American history. Pick a number between 1 and 45. 1 to 45. It may be something we've already touched on, but let's give it a go. If anybody out there has a number.
We'll ask our listening audience. Emily and I will pick one, but please drop your numbers in the chat, and we will pick one from the audience and call that number out. Again, that is 1 through 45. I'm going to go for the answer to everything, which is 42.
42. Okay. That, the Dharma Bums, Hunter S. Thompson's personal copy, right? So tying together the intricacies of that, I don't think I could do a great job of. My associate Jake Sheff is much, much better at this piece than I. But I think gonzo journalism was coined because of Hunter S. Thompson. And Mr. Irsay loved Hunter S. Thompson. There's a somewhat funny, famous story. Hunter S. Thompson recommended that Ryan Leaf be taken over Peyton Manning. And if you don't know who Peyton Manning is, you're not a football fan. He's the only person that has a statue in front of our football stadium. So he ended up being arguably, if not our best, certainly one of the best of all time. And for my money, he is the best Colt ever. But this particular book was a personal copy of Hunter S. Thompson. So that's a really cool piece in the fine books and manuscript space that we have of American history. How about another number?
Sandra said 39.
39 for Sandra. That one is the George Washington letter that Alexander Hamilton was actually an aide to the president. And he wrote that letter and constructed it, and the president signed it. So that's one that we've had for some time. And it's from 1780. And you think about that, that's pretty cool, right? Because I want to go there. The oldest artifact we have is from 1765. Wow. Faneuil Hall in Boston, unfortunately burned down. In order to get it rebuilt, they held an auction, and John Hancock signed this lottery ticket number 3737. I remember the number because I was a ticket guy, and you retain those things.
Sure.
And the cool thing to be able to say is, we have all these iconic artifacts and rattle off 5 or 10 things, and then go, we even have John Hancock.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
there you
amazing.
go. Okay, so do we want to move on to music, non-guitars?
We did have one other number for.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Fire away.
And that was Lee said 19.
Number 19. Oh, there's a JFK cigar box with a 1901 $50 coin. So evidently, it's this wooden guitar box. wooden cigar box with President Kennedy inscribed on the front of it. And there was a 50-cent piece in it from 1901. And I believe, as the story goes, he literally would flip a coin sometimes if he really couldn't make a decision. I don't know if that's true or wives' tale. That part I'd have to validate. But that's still a pretty cool piece. It gets displayed with other JFK artifacts like that hat I described earlier. It's a Stetson hat. It's really cool in this brown leather case with a red felt interior, and then a very traditional looking hat. And that display is typically next to the JFK rocking chair that I talked about earlier with Lawrence Arata. So some really cool JFK stuff. You want to move into another group?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. So this is music, but not guitars. They have their own section. A number from 1 to 22.
Emily, you go.
3.
Number 3. Okay, that's the Jim Morrison microphone that we talked about. Pick another number, please.
13.
13. This is Sir Elton John's grand piano. You guys are hitting all the markers.
Okay.
I'll do one near. Let's go with
Or Sandra.
how about this one? This is a very unusual piece. Paul McCartney, and this is sort of somewhat sad too, but it's part of history, right? Sort of the breakup, the Beatles, if you will. There was an affidavit that Paul McCartney's attorney sent to the other Beatles, and the copy in the Jim Irsay collection belonged to John Lennon. How do we know that? Well, this document, about 12 pages on what amounts to the English legal size paper, right? It talks about the reasons that the band should break up. So I think now there's things called no fault divorce or no fault dissolving of a business. Back then, someone had to be at fault. And as I recall, one of the things that McCartney's attorneys, I think, said was that John refuses to perform live any song he didn't write. Well, this upset John Lennon, so he grabs a pen and he writes in the margin. So this document has these handwritten annotations from John Lennon and basically says, Paul's been guilty of this for years. So unfortunately, obviously, the band didn't necessarily get along at the end, and it's a sad part of the tale, but it's also a significant part of history. And those things, I think, make the collection even more unique. I have not heard of another one. There may be other ones out there, but we got that at Christie's Auction House in New York, and has great provenance back to, right to John. So a cool piece. All right, let's do another one. How about in guitars, 1 to 30? We've talked a lot about guitars.
Sandra last said 22.
Oh, 22. And is that for the guitars?
I don't know, but we can just go with it.
Okay, let's go with guitars. 22.
Okay.
So there's a 1966 Vox Kensington that belonged to John Lennon. Vox is really known for amps, but this is a one of one, specially made for John Lennon. I think we're up to its total of 6 guitars related back to the Beatles, one of which is a Paul McCartney bass that he used in Wings when he formed that group, which is also phenomenal and fantastic. How about another number for guitars?
I'm going to go back to lucky number 13.
Lucky number 13. Oh, here we go. So that's the 1977 Gibson Les Paul Pro Deluxe guitar, Neil Schon Journey, Don't Stop Believin'. Who doesn't know that song, right? Everyone, right? It's a wonderful piece. I had a little epiphany while watching a couple of different series that were very, very popular over the last 10 or so years, however long it's been. The Sopranos at the very, very end of that's really not spoiler alert, I don't think, material, but the very, very end, the very last scene, the very last song playing is Don't Stop Believing, right? Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool. Now that guitar that belonged to Neil Schon is in the collection. And then I watched Breaking Bad, and those that know who Walter White, the main character, is, the very last scene, the very last episode, they're playing a song called Baby Blue, a little bit more obscure, but Baby Blue by a group called Badfinger. Badfinger was a number of different people, but Peter Ham was gifted the guitar from George Harrison. It's one of Mark Johnson's favorite, if not his favorite, in the collection. George Harrison played Paperback Writer, Hey Bulldog, a number of other Beatles songs on the guitar, gifted it to Pete Ham at Badfinger. They play a number of songs, including Baby Blue, to show the ripple effect of the artifacts. That song was the last song, the last scene in this series, Breaking Bad. So it's really cool to me to think of how some of these things are, hundreds of years old, the oldest being that 1765 lottery ticket I talked about. But even something as simple as the Journey Don't Stop Believing song, how it resonates not just with people that are, coming back from maybe some cancer, or there's a team that's behind in a game and they play the song, or they're having a series that they can maybe come back and make a season of it. It's interesting that those things are still resonating, and how they connect back to what Mr. Irsay is doing with the collection and these artifacts.
For sure.
Yeah.
Do we have another
Terrific
category?
Oh, sure. Let's see what we've got. Well, pop culture is a little bit smaller. Let's go 1 to 11.
I want number 1.
Number 1, Sylvester Stallone's handwritten script to Rocky. This 28-page Mead notebook. After seeing a boxing match with Muhammad Ali, he thought, oh, wouldn't it be incredible if some just unknown from nowhere could defeat the greatest of them all? And he wrote this script, as I understand it, when he wasn't doing quite as well as he does today, perhaps financially. But what an iconic movie that is. And I can't hear Rocky and not think, of here again, how music ties to an Eye of the Tiger, right?
Yeah.
And the build up to it, and him running up the steps famously. And people did that for years in Philadelphia until they moved the statue, as I understand it. But they still do the stairs. But that script is pretty cool, and goes back to a time where an underdog was created in a very American way, I think.
Yeah.
What about you guys? What do you think of that?
Absolutely.
100%.
And there was even a story where some guys ran up those stairs, and then Sylvester Stallone was waiting at the top or something like that.
I've heard that
was
before.
a few years ago. Yeah,
sure.
and I thought that is how iconic that movie is. First, no one thinks of Eye of the Tiger. Well, I can't say no one, but most people probably think Eye of the Tiger. They immediately think that. And then,
absolutely.
And then even now, a couple of college guys can run up those stairs and have this moment. That is just
right.
I'm gonna say it again. It's so cool.
So cool. It's you get a pass on cool. Cool's a great word to use. I do think not everyone would think it would be cool to drink. Was it 5, 6? How many raw eggs did he pour into the cup and then just drank it?
No.
Yeah, that was a moment.
It was a moment, that's for sure.
It was a moment.
That's one thing I don't forget about that movie either.
Right. That's good. It's great though. But guys, I really appreciate so much you having me on and talking about it. There's so many cool things as we talked about to see. But I think the diversity of the collection, the intention behind it from Jim Irsay and why he does it means everything to me. Certainly, we take a lot of responsibility and custodial care. I've talked about that before with you. Is very important to us. So we try to engage with people that Jim Canary, that looks after the paper, the artifacts that we have. To me, is one of the best paper preservationists in the world. He's at Indiana University Lilly Library, and a wonderful man. He's been to Tibet many times, and he's given talks in Berlin. And he knows, to me, just so much about how to preserve paper artifacts. And he's been looking after that scroll for many, many years. Mr. Irsay acquired it. That was the first major purchase that Mr. Irsay made back in 2001. And Jim Canary's been a part of the collection and everything we're doing on tour. And before that, even he precedes my involvement. So we've got a lot of specialists and a lot of people we can call on to help us caretake these artifacts.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
You've mentioned that you're going to Boston, and then you've mentioned another city that is after that I will reserve for a much more formal announcement later on. But where are some places online that our audience can go in and see if the Irsay collection is coming towards them?
Well, that's great. Thanks so much for asking. We have our social media channels here: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok at the Jim Irsay Collection on Instagram, and on down the line at the Jim Irsay Collection. Twitter is simply at Irsay Collection. It's a little bit shorter, but the others, if you say the Jim Irsay Collection, obviously Irsay, IRSAY, then you should be able to find us on social media. We certainly have a nice landing page that talks about and has photos of and some video of the places that we've been. Some of the cities we've even talked about going back to. The event we had in Los Angeles was not quite as large and a little bit more private event. That was really geared towards that 100th anniversary of Kerouac's birth. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about going back there because we've played places like the Hammerstein Ballroom. We've played the Bill Graham Civic Auditorium in San Francisco. These places hold 8,500 people or more. This weekend in Boston will be at TD Garden, of course, for basketball. That can hold 18,000 plus. Not quite as many with our band, but certainly if you haven't got a reservation yet to come see it, go to Jim Irsay Collection.com and get your registration in to come see us this coming Saturday night in Boston, or just check the website and see when it's coming to a city near yours, to you, I should say.
For sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're going to have to go, Trey.
So when we go on our U.S. tour, we will have to stop by. Larry, this has been an incredible time speaking with you. You are an incredible advocate for this collection, and I have to say, you speak with such positivity. You are clearly so engaged in this conversation and being supportive of it, and it has really spoken volumes of it through the time that we've been speaking today.
That's really kind of you. Thanks. It touches me. It does. As I mentioned earlier, it's I consider it a huge privilege that Jim Irsay has asked me to oversee the collection, and it takes a lot of people to make it happen with his direction. But you guys are most kind. I really enjoy your podcast, and thanks so much for having me on. And please, anybody listening, tell your friends, family, anyone that may be near. They really are going to miss out if it's in your city and they didn't take the time to come see us. Would love to have everyone who can come see all these cool artifacts.
Absolutely.
100%.
Thank you.
As we close out today's episode, we want to remind you that this episode, along with every episode moving forward, is always a memory of Joe Capone, our moderator, fellow comedian, passionate encourager, and greatly missed friend. You can find us pretty much wherever you tune into podcasts. For updates, announcements, and more, please follow us on social media under Modern Romantic. Thank you, everybody, and have a cool day.
Thanks again, guys. I appreciate it. Take care.
You